Welcome to the It's Your Story to Tell podcast, where brave people share their story to inspire others and what's possible. I'm your host, Megan Babcock, and I'm the founder of It's Your Story to Tell and the Coach Collective. And we are back today with Robyn. So if you missed out on the first episode of this series with her, I would love for you to go back and just hear a little bit more about her story, where she shared about adoption and being an immigrant, also navigating an abusive, toxic relationship that resulted in being impregnated when she was raped, and how she really navigated that hard. It was such a encouraging conversation, even though those things were really hard. So I'm so thankful for your willingness and your vulnerability to share. But we just want to acknowledge that you may not be in a place where you are celebrating the overcoming of something really hard. And we know you might find yourself while listening to this in just a dark place that you feel overwhelmed. We want to be here for you. And if you want to reach out, we want to encourage you. But we also recognize if you need help right now in this moment where it's more of a crisis situation, that you can get help if you will call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. So we're back and we're going to hear more from you, Robyn, about just how you are using all that you navigated in those years and meeting your husband and getting married and moving to Oregon. And now, what are you doing to make a difference? I know I've seen so many things that you're involved in, so I'm really excited to hear more about it.
Yeah. Well, like in the previous episode, I had talked about my passion for people and family. And I think part of being adopted and viewing family the way the Bible calls us to view people and family just kind of, I don't know. I easily adopt people into my life, I guess you could say. And I know that we talked a little bit about guarding your heart. And the thing with that is, and that goes with every relationship. Mm-hmm. And so while I shared a bit of my testimony in the previous episode that includes love and dating and abuse, there's also a lot to navigate in just relationships in general. And so I guess you could say I kind of came into life like a gullible, happy Labrador puppy.
Just I can see that.
excited about life stuff. And then I learned that, whether wherever you're at, mm-hmm. there's heartache in all kinds of areas, but learning how to forgive and give grace and guard your heart, but still hope the best for those who hurt you is such a balancing act. And without God, there's just no real good foundational basis for it, because he's been my only everything through all of it. And you're gonna find it in church, and you're gonna find it in other areas of politics that tout, good values in certain ways. And humans are humans, and humans let humans down. And that's why we have to rely on God. And so, I've gone through different things outside of that. But I remember there's a time with my husband where I was like, I'm never doing this again, and I'm never doing that again. And I just not going to be anything like myself, and no one's going to know me, and I have no interest in having friends and getting to know people ever again, because it's just too painful. And it was just one of those kinds of conversations that you have with your husband in the car. And I was like, I'm never getting involved in ministry, and what in the world, the church isn't being the church. And it was just like a whole slew of all that. And then my husband poured truth back into me, and he's like, no, you're going to meet these kinds of people, and it's going to be people where your heart's aligned, and you're going to have friends, and you're going to, meet loyal people, and you're going to make a difference because God, you put you on this earth for a reason. he just, the introvert guy was pouring all my poor husband. He's like the only introvert in this family. So he has to deal with all of the everything and whatever I drag him to. But I can also be like, you're the one that said I was gonna.
You spoke that over me
Yeah,
when,
spoke it
in
over.
that moment.
You had your chance for me to hide away in the corner.
Yeah.
So now we're all going out. But so I would say that, yes, the other one was really terrible, but I've gone through some very interesting things where people are like, we go through stuff, but that's just kind of wild, and but through it, it's funny, and moving here, God just continued to stir within my heart what is now stirring embers, and that happened. It was encouraged more as I talked with a friend about my heart, and the way I wish relationships could happen, and the things that I saw people could be or wanted to be. And then I was like, we just really need to create a place for that, and a way for women to be able to operate in that. And so that's how Stirring Embers blazed to life. Was, it's like the campfire. A lone coal will easily die out, but when you stir the embers together, they can once again reignite that once blazing flame. And that was because that's how I had felt, and had also seen that other people felt that way. But through good relationships, we were able to do that. But I wanted it faith-based as well, and not just because it's not something that's biblical, but it's something that I wanted God as the forefront in. But a community where someone, regardless of their background, could feel welcomed in, and not like they had to bring a resume of requirements or title or whatever, that they could just come and be amongst good people and just really feel the presence of God and what that vision is regardless. And so we go and we meet at businesses. In fact, earlier today we had a casual meetup at a coffee shop, and any lady can come and join. And oftentimes those people, they might not ever step foot in the church lobby, but we want them to be able to come in and experience the presence of God in these good relationships. And some of them, they'll even have like-hearted passions, like for the single mom, being there for them. And it's like, they might not have that chance to serve in a way that a church might want someone to. And I get that in churches, there's certain areas of involvement where that is needed. But I wanted a place for women to be able to operate within their purpose and their giftings, and do that alongside good Christian women without having to reach some level in order to be able to do that. And so sometimes we'll go and do something that will come alongside single moms or help them. And then we also gather in homes in a more intimate setting. And sometimes I'll share a message, and sometimes I won't, because if I hear that God is doing something amongst those conversations, then I don't want to interrupt what he's doing, because I can always say something later, and my voice doesn't always have to be heard.
Yeah, I love that. Just really tuning in to like, what is the need here, and letting the Holy Spirit direct you, because what he knows about each person in that room allows for so much more power when we just partner with him. Because to your point, sometimes it's a message of encouragement that needs to be heard. Sometimes it's someone just sharing their heart and their story and letting others come alongside of them. I know for me, as I was on my healing journey, and I love that in the first episode together that you were talking about how this is a journey, and how it takes time. We're never fully arrived until that day we get to meet Jesus, and no more pain, no more troubles, no more, any of these things that we experience on earth. We're going to need to continually become more like him. And it's so needed to do this in community because we all need that encouragement and that support, which goes right in line with what you were also saying about how if we could just be there for each other before it gets to crisis level, like how amazing is that? Now there's always going to be those times, but if we can show up and be intentional, all along the journey with people. And I don't know if it's just this day and age where everything is as fast, fast food, fast, like everything right away. Burger King was like ahead of its times when it was like your way, right away. Like, isn't that the world we live in? It's like we all want it to just be what we want and we want it now. And unfortunately, that is just not the way life happens. And so creating that space is really beautiful. I also know just in the work that I do with helping people to navigate these really difficult things that groups are such a powerful place for healing. And the reason I think that is that when we go through something traumatic and you think about your story or my story,
Mm-hmm.
the trauma that was experienced was that being alone, like feeling like you didn't have someone there with you to help you navigate it, to just see you, to say, gosh, that is really hard. It's not about agreeing, it's about just validating, like, that's a difficult experience and encouraging them. And for so long, I didn't feel safe in being able to be vulnerable and to be able to share. And if we can't help people share their story, we can't help them heal, right? Because you can't heal what's not revealed. And so when we make a safe space and we are vulnerably sharing our heart, it
Yeah.
allows people to feel like, okay, this person's not going to judge me. Like, they had a lot of mess in their life, and so I feel okay opening up. Because for me, in church and even in my family relationships, there was so much perfectionism and having to have things look a certain way that there was a lot of shame in that place. But I was just like, well, how's this going to make everyone else look too? It wasn't just about me, but I
Yeah.
wanted to make my family look good, and
Yeah.
you know
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. And when I got into a group that was specific to the healing that I was doing, and I did two groups. One was healing from sexual abuse, and one was healing from abusive relationship. And when it was so hard for me to go into that because I had put up all of these shields, I had masks for every occasion, and knowing that I was going to go in there and what would be required in that space. But when I did unload things and just share, it was like this relief so quickly, just of like, I'm not having to carry this by myself anymore. It's not a secret. And we know that the enemy wants us to keep things in hiding and in secret, because that's when you're just sitting there believing the lies and feeling the shame. But when you speak it out into existence, light is brought to it, and people can speak truth to you about God and his love, and that his purpose for them. And so for me, that was life changing, life giving, and it really helped me to begin to develop compassion for
Mm-hmm.
myself,
Yeah.
because for so many years I judged myself. Like, I was probably more negative than anybody else around me, just because I think sometimes we feel like if I say it to myself, it won't hurt as much when someone else
Yeah.
says it.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, that's no new nose. I've already been, you know, giving myself the 70 lashes. Like, you can't beat me down any more than I've already beat myself down. And when we can go and be in a room with women
Yeah.
who love us well, it's amazing.
Yeah, and it's like designed in a way where it's just there's no expectations. It's not intimidating.
Mm,
It's about Like, we do our best to feed you physically, whether it's just getting together around a fire with water, but usually there's coffee. Coffee is definitely usually involved. I'm sure you've seen all the posts. Coffee,
Yeah.
coffee, more
Yeah.
coffee. It's all the coffee party. But we've also had like bacon platter parties. Just, it's,
Mm.
I love, that's my random side coming out. Like, well, why not? And there was this time where we had like 7 platters of bacon or more. We even had sausage bacon. Like, we, yeah,
Wow.
there's
Okay.
a thing. It's a thing. Yeah. And so, but the goal is like, nurturing women in with that physically, because it aligns with nurturing them spiritually. And
Mm.
it goes to that verse when Jesus asked Peter if he loves him. And
Mm.
if you look at it just English wise, yes, it would be annoying that someone asks you 3 times, like, well, yes, of course I love you, Lord. And he's like, well, feed my sheep. And or
Mm.
he means his people. And but in that language, he actually asked him the different levels of love, so a different form of love each time. And I have the visual where it's like, what is feeding involving? And that's nurturing. It's not taking food and throwing it at someone's face and this is what you need to eat. It's a very loving, involved, hospitable process and nurturing process. And but also just fun. Like, you said, back to the fast food stuff, like, especially now, we really struggle having just lighthearted quality time where there's no, we're not giving something fun to get something from you, nor like, I wanted to take a system where people could be involved regardless of the season in their life, and they didn't have to take whatever season of life they were in and make it fit the system. I wanted to make this, I wanted to flip that box on its head and blow it wide open and just make it where the system fits where people are at. So that way, the most involved person and the most random, unattached person could both come together and have the same experience, basically, and a space for women to thrive in their giftings. And so I don't put out something where it's like, hey, can someone bring this many of this food, or can someone, do this spread? It's when they feel like that they're thriving in something that's like, oh, I would really like to do this. And they just come up and they're like, I'd like to host in my home and I want to provide this and this, but I didn't have to ask them. And
Yeah.
so the intentionality of it getting done comes from a different area. Does that make sense? Where, it's not like, can someone do this? But they're like, oh, I want to do that. And it allows them to walk in their purpose. And I wanted to create communities because I love conferences and I love those things that happen. But I always think about the women, truth was poured into you, your purpose, all that encouragement. But when you get back home, who's there for you? And so I wanted for women to be able to have a community to walk alongside them in that. And yeah, just be.
I love that. I love, that focus on community. I love that you brought up about conferences. So I am working with a few different women, and we were talking about planning a conference. And one of the things that is so important to me, because a healing conference, not only are you getting portrayed into you, but you are facing some of those lies and the negative narratives and all of those hard things. And you have to have care, like aftercare, because you don't want to just open these things up and not make sure that people don't have community to continue to nurture and grow. And so that's something that's also really important to me, is that we're helping people to uncover things, and then we're never letting them walk alone through it. And so I love that about what you've created. Is there anything else you want to share about the different aspects of things that you're involved in?
Do you have any specific questions?
Well, I remember when we were talking, one of the things I feel like you are involved in is like getting on the ground and really like doing the work that's needed. And one of the things we talked about was the work that you're doing within the sex trafficking. I know that was something that I heard. And how do people get involved in, like, if they're burdened for something, or they're
Right.
burdened for like the single mom, or they're burdened for, I am not a fan for like going out and just protesting your abortion places and putting up signs. It's like, no, let's get practical. Let's get alongside people. So how do people find those different opportunities to, take
Yeah.
action on things?
Yeah. It's important to definitely have those conversations with those in leadership. But I think one of the things that we just really forget is, like, we say we the people, but I think we really struggle with what that means. And we talk about the power of the people, but we don't really apply that as much as we could. And so, like, with sex trafficking, yeah, I've gone on shadowed on stings with a detective friend of mine, and I've been like, okay, I'll not put out there what I shouldn't put out there, but what can I do to kind of like visually share awareness that this is here and that it's also there? Because when people see it or feel like a part of the experience, it's a little bit more of a wake up call than just hearing,
Right.
oh, it's everywhere. Like somehow it just goes over people's heads that it's everywhere. Versus, yeah, they're like, if someone, I saw the detective on their chatter, and he talked to like 70 people, and 45 of them were pedophiles and they were from this area, or you could catch them all in the city that's 25 miles away. And or that these people, they'll drive an hour and a half, 2.5 hours to have sex with a 15-year-old. And it's hard seeing those things. But
Mm,
if your law enforcement is not doing that themselves, then it's the power of the people to put pressure in keeping leadership accountable to the doing the things that matter. And so some, they will say, well, we need more training, or we don't have this to be able to run this. But last I checked, it was only $40 or $45 to have someone come train a whole team of a police force. So go to sharedhopeinternational.org, or if that's not it, then go to Google and look up Shared Hope International. They have trained people who can go and talk to your local law enforcement and help them put together a team, give them the required training that they need to do those areas. And maybe we can provide those links as well.
yeah.
But like, I was at a meet and greet for someone who was running for governor, and this person asked this question, what are you going to do about sex trafficking? And of course she had her area, but she didn't realize that she had more power than, like, if the lady got
Mm,
elected governor, she'd have her place. But actually it was the lady who was asking the question who could have done more for that issue rather than putting it on the place of the governor. And so sometimes it's just really knowing that it's you. Like, you really are the purpose. You really are the answer.
yeah, that's
Yes.
hard, right? Because sometimes we're like, oh, I just want it fixed. I didn't really want to do something about it. But I think if people can just hear what you were saying there, because we do have an opportunity to do something, just in your own community, and figuring out what are the problems, how could you come alongside. And I love that, we the people. And you're right, we have gotten so dependent on the government or the church or someone
Mm-hmm.
else that we forget that we have been gifted with power to make a difference. And so
Yeah.
asking God, this is a tricky, this is like, because if you ask, he's going to answer, but asking him, what do you want me to do in this time? How can I use my story, whatever it is? It doesn't have to be a
Yeah.
story that's traumatic or gone through these hard things. We all have something to offer. And so let's just leave our listeners with that. That's your homework.
Yeah.
Go
Well, and
and
that's the area, like you talked about. I know, because all the areas, you could get down to a lot of things in conversation, but to like the all encompassing factor is it really is being intentional in the lives of people, because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those that they try to connect with for sex trafficking is the overlooked teenager, the one with the alcoholic dad, the one that the mom might be high and she's not there, and so they're connecting with these people and meeting up with them. But if you're that mentor and you know, oh, they're being ignored, you take them to lunch and you're like, what are you doing in life, and what are the things that are going on, and you're truly there for them. They're going to have that relationship with you versus the relationship with the one who's trying to draw them this way. And they're either gonna have those instances local, or they're like, there's this boyfriend, we're gonna run away together, and then it goes like, that's how they get kidnapped internationally, is, you know, then they lose all their paperwork and everything because they take that unseen person. But if we're seeing people and we're there helping them, and they're less likely to get into that kind of relationship, they're less likely to go with the boyfriend that they shouldn't be, because they're like, oh, I value the advice that you're giving me, and I'm not getting that from my parents, but you've been there. And that's the thing, is like, not always telling the right answers, is being there, and they know that you care. They're going to go to you. Just, I think we make making a difference too hard, and we try to make it too hard. And I tell people, like, well, should I say this? Should I say that? It's like, if they already know what you stand for, you don't have to be your own smorgasbord. They already know that.
True.
What they want is, are you going to invest in them? And when they see that, they'll go to you. They'll listen to your advice.
Well, that is awesome advice. We all have at least one person that we can connect with, make a difference, allow them to be seen, known, loved. And I think you're so right. People get into these situations because of a need, whether it's an emotional or maybe even a physical need. You know, like if your mom and dad aren't present and you don't have food and you feel like there's a way for you to make an income, you know, you make certain decisions. And so we have to go peel it all the way back to like root cause, you know, not just like looking at and at a high level. Like sometimes it's just, like you said, you get too overwhelmed if you start thinking about sex trafficking as a whole. But how can I love someone who's in need? One person is a manageable place to start from. So that would be my encouragement, each of you, to ask what it is that you can do to make a difference in someone's life. Come alongside of them so that they can have a story like ours of overcoming and being able to go back into the darkness and help bring people into the light. There's so many people who need to feel the love of Jesus, but they need the way that it's going to come to them is in the form of us being there in the flesh with them. Thank you, Robyn, for being here and sharing your wisdom. And I hope everyone has really enjoyed our time together. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you're doing to make a difference when you figure it out. We want to celebrate that, and let's be a people of action and going and finding one person that we can start with and come in alongside of them. If you know someone who is looking and needing support, you can connect with us. There will be links in the show notes, and you can find Robyn on all her many different social media platforms. You want to follow her. She has so much encouragement. I love when I can scroll through and see just so much encouragement in my feed. It helps me go through the day. So if you don't have that in your feed, you should get it. But yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and thank you for being with us here. Please come back and check out our upcoming stories where brave people are sharing how they're making a difference in the world. Thanks, Robyn.
Thank you for having me.